Caroline, welcome back to the MotorMouth Podcast. Now, we're going to kick off with a subject close to both our hearts. There's been a load of coverage lately in social media about Formula One clamping down on content creators, especially those that have or are using trademarked or utilizing infringements on Formula One's IP. And that could be whether it's using their broadcast footage, their highlights packages in their own social content, creating merchandise with anything referencing Formula One, having Formula One in social handles, and so on. And this is all related to people building brands or building businesses in some cases that are benefiting off the back of Formula One and using their IP. And Formula One, as we know, has been sending out a few letters and emails to people, and mainly content creators or YouTubers, telling them to change their handles, remove certain content. And some creators have really been on the receiving end of it, which we'll go into. But as a creator yourself, who has recently changed their social handle name, which we'll also come on to, give us your sort of your helicopter view of this. What do you make of the whole thing from a creator perspective?
Sure. Yeah. I think that I can preface by saying in the Formula One world, there are a lot of opinions, and mine is just one of many. However, I do think it's difficult case by case, person by person. For some people, it's as easy as pressing edit profile and they're just changing their name. For other people, it's merch shops and entire, factory system operations and personnel shifts and even steady streams of income that they've been able to rely on that now they're having to go into taxing documents and website URLs and domains. And it varies case by case. I think it's really hard. I have to commend Formula One. Their brand guidelines are very clear. And if anything, this is a really great educational experience for me to actually read the brand guidelines. And they don't mince anything. They don't hint or suggest. It is very clear. It's very cut and dry. And I actually, having read only a couple, I haven't read obviously all of the emails, but some friends of mine who received them were kind enough to share them. And they were very respectful in the way they communicated it. It was very educational. They were saying, hey, we understand that you might not have realized this, but here's a direct link to the brand guidelines where this exact, screenshots and examples was in violation. And so they weren't coming for people's throats in any way. I felt like they were just communicating, hey, this is not in line with what we stand for and what you're allowed to do. And it can be hard, I think, as a content creator, because you look around and you see so many people that still have F1 in their usernames and whatnot. And how do you police all of them? I mean, there's so many out there. And so it's hard, but it's one of those things that you just don't want to let it impact your relationship with the people or with the sport. Because I think, I don't speak for Formula One when I say, but they love social media.
Yeah, of course. And you don't want it to impact your relationship with them. And this is where it gets a bit messy, because I'm not going to name anyone because that would be unfair. But there are certain people who have, rather than take your stance on it, I guess, which is, I get it. They have IP to protect. They've dealt with it in a very diplomatic way. They've asked nicely on the whole for most people to change their handles or whatever it might be. There are one or two individuals who I've seen have fought back a little bit. And I've seen a couple of videos on YouTube where certain individuals have really gone for it with Formula One and basically said, this is not on. And I get it, because they've had videos taken down, dozens of videos taken down, banned by YouTube because of a copyright claim by Formula One. Mm-hmm. And that obviously impacts algorithms, and it affects revenue streams and reputation. There's an awful lot that goes into it. So I can understand why people would get angry. But fighting back against a multi-billion-dollar company who, at the end of the day, one day you might need to support you in some capacity, or who might do you a favor or help you out or give you access to a race or whatever it might be, seems like a not very sensible way of dealing with this. And I don't know whether you've seen that, whether you've seen examples of where people have just gone, actually, do you know what? No, not having this Formula One. I'm going to go right back at you. It just, to me, seems like a pretty ignorant way of dealing with it.
Yeah, when we started the page, I always wanted it to remain respectful and that to be the paramount focus. And unfortunately, not everybody takes that stance. And I'm a believer in the long game, seeing how
Yeah.
today's decisions affect things down the road in the long game. And my mom used to always say growing up, I don't know if you guys have this term across the pond, but don't be a pot stirrer. Do you know what a pot stirrer is?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we just try not to be pot stirrers over here. We try to be truthful, be respectful, and funny and lighthearted and all the things. I mean, nobody wants a vanilla bean, but it was just when you stir the pot, it never turns out well for the pot stirrer.
No.
So
No, particularly someone like Formula One. I mean, I think I have a slightly sympathetic Formula One stance on this because I've worked in Formula One for so many years. I've been around Formula One and experienced the Bernie years where it was way more restricted than it is now. Not necessarily in terms of social media, because there wasn't really any social media in the Bernie era as far as Formula One went. But I understand how seriously they take their IP and having come from a sponsorship background, I working with F1 sponsors or team sponsors, even then, when we were trying to create, branded videos or, sales material, we weren't allowed to touch broadcast material or, infringe on IP either. So even the people that are paying huge millions to be inside the sport, they're not allowed to use broadcast footage unless they pay ridiculous money for it. So I kind of sympathize with Formula One. And I think on the whole, creators have dealt with it pretty well. And as you know, you're involved with the roster of talent I work with at WTF Talent, and I've had lots of conversations with various people who happen to have F1 in their handle over the last few days and over the weekend, and I think pretty much all of them are going to do what you've done and have a little bit of a refresh and a rebrand, and who knows, it could be a good thing. But how's it affected you? For you, was it as simple as I'm going to take F1 out of F1 Caroline and just change the name?
So I want to start by saying this whole, the emails and the things did not spur me changing my name necessarily to Caroline's Corner in a small way, but Caroline's Corner has been in the works for 3 or 4 months now. Because I love Formula One. I've only discovered my love for Formula One by being curious about a new sport. And I thought to myself, there's so many great sports out there that people don't know about. And I would love to bring that to people's ears and to people's eyes, just like Formula One was for me. And that was how Caroline's Corner was born about 3 months ago. So it's been in process. Been working on the graphics, been working on the specs and all the things. And so I had planned to roll it out. I think I had told you about it last week. I had planned to roll it out. And then the next day I hear about all these emails that are being sent out, and I texted you guys. I was like, should I just change everything now to Caroline's Corner?
Do it. Yeah, just do it.
And they were like, yes. And I have to hand it to you guys. You did say when I first started working with you guys, hey, be careful with broadcast footage. Be careful with, IPs. They'll come for you. They're not going to come for you in a mean way, but you just want to cover yourself. So I think I feel grateful that I was already so far down the road in the process to begin with, that it really was as easy as pressing a button for me. But that's just because all of the work had been done already. A lot of my friends have been just scrambling with graphic designers and managers and agents and assistants to try to get everything switched, changed, etc. It's been heartbreaking to watch, but at the same time, I get it. I mean, I get it.
I get it. And really, it should clean up the whole process because, at the moment, if you scroll through TikTok and look at F1 creators' content, there's tons of broadcast footage in there. And we've been approached by loads of creators that, want to talk to us about joining the roster. And anyone that has broadcast footage in their feed, we just have to say no because we knew this would happen. But it should clean all that up. And hopefully what comes out of it is more creativity because people are going to have to get creative with their content. And the Formula One teams do have their rights-free filming days at the beginning of every year where they record loads of content, on-track content, empty grandstands, admittedly, but the car going around a track and pit stops and logos and blah, blah, blah. That's all available and people can use that editorially with no fear of reprimand. But I guess it opens up a wider conversation about Formula One and content creation, because there are other sports. It's been widely publicized by various people that the NBA do a brilliant job of including creators and saying, if you want the highlights package and you want to put it on your own channels, go for your life. You know, that we just want to grow. And that sport is growing massively globally, in no small part to opening it up like that. Do you think Formula One should take a leaf out of their book and other sports, or do you think perhaps this is part of the sort of weird, sick appeal that we have with Formula One, that it's such a exclusive club?
I think that Formula One doesn't have necessarily the same exposure problem that the NBA has had. Drive to Survive, I mean, that's a broken record. It changed the game for Formula One. So I don't think that they necessarily need to open the doors in order to gain more followers or more fans. I think that they're doing just fine on the fan building front. However, I do think that they could maybe create some policies or some groups or some partnerships with content creators, because I did feel like, and it's hard. Again, there's so many Formula One content creators out there. But what's beautiful about WTF Talent is that you guys have a pool of high quality, trustworthy, hardworking, creative content creators that if there was a partnership with Formula One or something that opened the lines of communication to allow and have allowances that give the people, the footage and the access and the things that they want, I think that's the next step. Do I think they're there yet? Probably not. But somebody floated the idea of a content creator program that F1 should do. I think that's a great idea. I'm sure it's already been in the works, and I'm sure most people are on board with it. It's just getting it cleared, like anything.
Yeah, and it is a difficult one, and I think the only well, there are probably upsides and downsides to this whole thing that's come out the last few days, but I know that one of the downsides is that a lot of creators are now confused, especially those ones who go to races, spend their own money, go to a race, are in a grandstand or on occasion even in the paddock or the paddock club, and they don't know whether they can film themselves in those places once they're in the confines of this venue that's owned by Formula One for that week. Are they allowed to film their faces? Are they not allowed? Are they allowed to? They definitely can't film a car on track, and they can't post that. But can they walk around the paddock and film themselves doing a tour of the paddock? I think there's a few grey areas that people in this content creator world in Formula One are certainly struggling with. But this perhaps is the start of clearing it all up and having a clean slate and everyone knowing where they stand. And then if you continue to abuse those IP rules, then I think the consequences could get harsher. But it's fascinating. Is there anything you think Formula One, outside of perhaps a content creator program, is there anything that you think Formula One could do to embrace the content creator ecosystem more?
I actually have to tip my hat and give a nod to some of the teams that have been personally partnering with content creators and having basically a content creator on the roster for the sake of the season. I think that's the best way to kind of delineate, hey, and that Formula One can then control the narrative, which I think is kind of at the heart of what they're trying to do. If they have contracted content creators that are working alongside them with them, not only will it relieve the stress off of their current social media team that's working overtime on overtime, it'll also give personalities and faces and people that they can turn to for the many, many, many events that they do, that I'm sure is burning out the smaller pool of people that they're using right now. I mean, content creators have so many skills and can bring so much to the table beyond just fan engagement. But that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, and maybe, again, taking a leaf out of another sport, Formula E, who have, as you well know, having worked with Formula E this in season 10 just gone, you did a lot of work for them. You did many, many videos, as did James Coker and Olivia Hartley. The three of you were contracted to Formula E for the whole season. And some of the numbers that you guys have created for that series are massive, like properly big. I mean, one of James's videos is, I think, well over 6 million views and counting. And it's all about Formula E. So it's great to see them embrace the whole social aspect of things and content creators and so on. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it all comes out in the wash, but it feels like, for me, it's probably the right step forward for now. We'll see how it all transpires. Now, I do have a question though before we go on.
Go ahead. And this can be taken out if it needs to. I couldn't help but notice, and it could just be the people that I heard from. The only people that got emails that I know of were all American. Did you know of anybody that was not American that got emails
I
this
don't know.
week?
This week, I don't know. Well, I know of Americans that have got emails. Yes, I don't know of any British-based or European-based creators who. I mean, no one else on our roster who's in Europe that I know of yet has received an email. There are British people who have had like the videos coming down off YouTube. That there was, I don't believe there was any letter. It was just a ban. It's just popping up in your inbox. This video has been removed for copyright infringement. That was a British creator who got really nailed. Had 16 or so of his videos removed. But I haven't heard of any of our UK based colleagues or contacts receiving a letter, which is interesting.
Yeah. I noticed that on day 2 or 3 of it, as I was really doing a deep dive in preparation for the Caroline's Corner episode. And I thought to myself, I can name on 2 hands the number of people that got emails, and they are all American. And I was like, I'm going to ask Tim if he knows of anybody that wasn't American that got one this time. I mean, I know that there are British and German and other people that have gotten them in the past, but I just felt like this time it was American.
Focused on the States. Well, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I've this is all still pretty fresh. I had a number of concerned messages over the weekend from various creators, but none of the ones I spoke to had actually received a letter. It was all hearsay from others, again in the States, but that could just be coincidence. That might just be the pools that we swim in. But yeah, very interesting. I mean, it goes back. This is nothing new. I mean, I was listening to the WTF1 podcast the other day with James and Hayden, and they were talking about when Lewis Hamilton used to get his cease and desist letters from Formula One for posting. This goes back a long, long way. So it's nothing new. But yeah, very interesting times. And like I say, it's just an opportunity for creators to get even more creative, and they're going to have to be honest with you. So you've changed. You are no longer F1 Caroline. You have Caroline's Corner now, and we've seen a few of your posts with your branding on, your new branding, which is all looking lovely. So what's the future for this then? This is delving into more sports. You're still going to cover Formula One, but you're going to try and look at do similar things in other sports, right?
Correct. So I loosely base each episode on 3 different segments. One segment is always going to be F1, Formula One. It's my heart where most of my joy in sport comes from. However, it's funny because it was in preparation for the Olympics, this past Olympics, that really started to inspire Caroline's Corner of, what's so beautiful about the Olympics is that there are all these sports that we've never heard of that suddenly we are rooting with our whole chest for these sports that we've never watched before. And I thought to myself, how cool would it be to have a podcast that helps to teach people about sports or events that are coming up in sports that they may not have previously known about. So, for example, this week I talked about the FedEx Cup, which is the golf tournament or the golf championship that's happening here in the United States. And next week I'm going to talk about E1 sport boat racing, which I'm very excited about. I kind of previewed SailGP previously. You told me about E1 and I got to looking at it, and I'm really excited to tell people about it because it is so cool. And they're racing this weekend, right? In Lake Como.
I saw the advertising this morning. Actually, they're racing in Como, and it's an interesting one. I mean, I'll look forward to when you release that because I know loosely about the series in the sense that I know there are some massive names involved with it, like Will Smith, and
Checo Perez.
Perez, Rafa Nadal, I think, has a team.
Yes, and Tom Brady.
Tom Brady has a team. So they're kind of going at it on social media against each other, which is quite fun. And how the sport has got those names. I mean, whoever has brokered those deals is a clever person because they're serious names. And the boats look really, really cool. They're not that quick. They're not that fast. But, it's early days. So I'm sure that will come. But yeah, it's a cool championship. I've got a few friends that work there and they love it. And, it's getting traction. The guy behind it, Roddy Basso, has been on the podcast. Actually, he's a fascinating bloke. He used to work at NASA, and he's got a very big brain, a charismatic guy. So yeah, I look forward to hearing about that, and learning more about what that series is doing and why it's doing it, and whether they can get an audience. Because let's be honest, these are niche sports. Electric powerboat racing. it's pretty niche. I imagine the audience for that is
Absolutely.
not enormous.
Right. And that's the beauty of Caroline's Corner is that we're going to bring you the big ones that you've all heard of. We'll talk about the NFL. We'll talk about the Premier League. We'll talk about some of the bigger sports. But then I also want to always have a segment that's for some of those niche sports, some of those smaller sports that you may not have heard of that you might find, hey, this is really cool. And guess what? They come to my area. I should go now while the tickets are cheap. Because if it happens like Formula One and the tickets suddenly start getting really expensive,
Yeah.
I can say I've been there.
Yeah.
So.
First mover advantage. Talking of the NFL, have you seen this Welsh guy, Lewis Rees Zammit, who is a rugby player from Wales who's gone across to play running back for the Kansas City Chiefs?
Running back. Interesting.
Yeah.
I will have to look more into it because a lot of times I feel like it's funny actually. When I was in high school, they had my high school had a foreign exchange program with South Africa, a school in South Africa, and they would have rugby players come over to the States, and they would absolutely demolish us in our American. Oh my goodness, they would destroy. I mean, they'd show up to practice no pads because you don't wear pads in rugby, and they would just absolutely they just absolutely destroy these poor high schoolers, and it was hilarious to watch. And I remember thinking at the time, why doesn't this happen more? Because rugby is not really a huge sport in the United States. It's really more about American football.
Yeah.
But rugby is fascinating. I actually talk about it a little bit also on this week's episode of Caroline's Corner because we talk about Ilona Mayer.
Love rugby.
Yeah, it's great. And I watched it for the first time this Olympics. It is fascinating. And I think that the American football players need to be worried that some of these rugby players are seeing the cha-ching money that comes with American football.
Yeah.
They might be coming for their jobs. And I don't hate it. I don't.
I like it. It'd be interesting to see how it crosses over the other way, because I think going from no pads to pads is probably easier than going from pads to no pads and suddenly feeling, that impact. But the NFL has created this international player pathway program, so they can do exactly this and bring players across from other countries, trying to open it up a little bit more. So he's come over, he did this big training program in Florida. And he's joined on a 3-year contract. So I've been following him on TikTok. It's quite interesting. But anyway, look, you've got me talking about rugby now. We're a
This is Caroline's Corner.
Yeah, we're basically doing Caroline's Corner here. But that's hugely exciting. So that's, you're already recording. Have you released episodes yet? Should we be listening already, or is it?
Yeah. So episode 1 was released last week. Episode 2, it comes out in about 30 minutes. It's already queued up. And so, these will be weekly episodes that'll come out every week. Some weeks might have more than others. It's going to be completely based on what's happening that week in sports. Yeah. And I always try to give, athlete highlights as well. So maybe I'll look at this Welsh gentleman who's now going to be competing for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that rugby players have played before, but they've always been in a kicking or punting position.
Yeah.
So this is interesting.
Yeah, they just come on for that one moment, don't they? It's like, we need someone to kick the ball between the posts. On you come, and there's your check. And then go off and get drunk or something. That's literally their only role, isn't it?
That was my dad's job. My dad was the kicker for a long time.
Great role.
But he did not go off and get drunk afterwards. But I appreciated that he just had his one moment because it saved him from a lot of CTE.
100%. I mean, it's the best. It's the best position on the pitch. Surely, you just come on, kick the ball, and then sit back down again. That sounds pretty good to me. I get paid a bit of money for the privilege. Anyway, look, let's turn our attention back to Formula One. So we've, as we record today, we're coming up to Dutch Grand Prix in a few days' time. The second half of the F1 season is about to start. Thank God, after this sort of hiatus as the August shutdown, which makes life incredibly challenging for people like me who work in the commercial side of Formula One when the whole world just disappears. But they're coming back now. The inbox is starting to fill back up again, which is great. So we're heading into Zandvoort. We've got loads of exciting races left to still come. Now, I've broken this down into a few areas, and I'm going to get your perspective on a few things. And I think none of us expected this season to turn into the season that it has. And, 2024 felt to me at the beginning of the season like a bit of a write-off. But that cyclical convergence of technology has allowed the teams to close up on each other. And with Red Bull seemingly falling apart at the seams right now, it's all getting rather exciting. So Let's kick off with McLaren.
Mhm.
What do you think they can achieve this year? Do you think the Constructors' Championship is just a step too far for them? Can they compete with Red Bull, or are they going to lose too many points to the likes of Mercedes, who are going to steal points here and there?
I think that they have the most solid chance at P2, which is not groundbreaking. I think everybody shares that opinion. But I do think they have a shot at that first place in the constructors. But there are contingencies that have to be in place. I mean, you have to see Perez continue to struggle and Max also continue to struggle a little bit with the car. I don't think he struggled nearly as much. And I also think that we're going to start to see some development, I'll say, in Mercedes. With Lewis leaving, he's going to be left out of a lot of meetings, a lot of phone calls, a lot of debriefs. And so it's starting to really rest on George's shoulders. And I think that maybe that inner team tension actually might be good for McLaren.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I hope McLaren can get there or thereabouts. My worry is that if Perez picks up a few points here and there, Max continues to pick up points, Lewis and George Russell nick some points here or there. It just takes things away from McLaren. It might just be a bit too early for them, but I'd love to see them up there. What they do have, though, is two of the best drivers on the grid in Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. Loving Piastri, the Iceman, the new Kimi Räikkönen. Putting you on the spot, if you could only keep one of those two drivers at McLaren, who would you keep and why?
I know that this is not going to make me popular among your British
You're going to say
listeners,
Piastri,
but I adore Oscar Piastri. I watched him all the way through Formula 3, Formula 2, all the way into Formula 1. I think that he has the whole package. I think Lando's developed his package to, being the racer that he is. I think Oscar came in with it locked and loaded, ready to go. And so in looking at the long term, looking at the long game, I think Oscar Piastri is a more sure bet.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I mean, he is the coolest man in the paddock. There is no rattling his cage. He's just totally level-headed. He's funny on social media. He's got that side of things, but he is just deadpan in the paddock, and I love it. I'm here for it, and he's a fantastic driver. So I'd probably, despite Norris being British, I think I'd go Piastri as well. What about Max Verstappen? Now, we saw some chinks in his armor leading up to the break. We had Stroppy Max throwing his toys out the pram with his engineer. Not quite getting his own way all the time. The car not quite performing as it usually does. Red Bull not looking quite like the dominant force they once were. Do you think we're going to continue to see Stroppy Max throwing toys out the pram?
Okay, I do have to ask, because I read the word stroppy in your notes. What does that word mean, so that I know how to formulate this? I just don't know it, but it might be a thing over here. I can't say I've heard it.
I love this. Is great. So must be a British thing. Stroppy, grumpy, just I'm gonna throw a strop and get all pissed off. You're just stroppy.
Okay.
And like a petulant child.
Gotcha.
Like my 6-year-old child, when I don't give him what he wants, he gets stroppy.
Okay. Stroppy. I'm going to start using that. I love that.
Yeah.
I think my heart gets involved in a lot of these opinions. And so it's been hurt so many times before, where I feel like I start to see some Red Bull struggle and I'm like, Red Bull struggle, we're going to see someone else. And then they just come in and just destroy.
Yeah.
And so a part of me is like, well, I don't want to go so far as to get hope quite yet. However, it has seemed a bit of a stroppy consistency.
Yes, correct.
In their performance, and especially within Max. Have you guys talked at all about whether it's linked at all to Adrian Newey's departure?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I was listening to the race podcast, the latest one that they've done, and Ed Straw was talking about this with Ben Anderson and Mark Hughes. And while they didn't call out Adrian Newey's name, what they did say was this problem with Red Bull has been a long time coming. This is not the last year. This is not the last 18 months. This has been coming and brewing, and they've not had it all their own way. They've had an incredibly quick car, but it's taken a lot more than Adrian Newey to cause this effect. And there's been a number of things and departures, and obviously Christian Horner problems, and press and PR issues, and Max being, flirted with by Toto, and lots of other things that have gone on over the course of many months that have impacted the team's performance. And the Newey thing is obviously important, but there's a lot of very big brains behind Adrian Newey who have learned off him for years. So I don't think it's as clear as Newey leaves, car gets worse. I think there's probably a lot more at play. Obviously, it's a massive blow, but no, I don't think there's a direct correlation. I think it's probably a little bit more complex than that.
Yeah, sure. But as far as the rest of the season goes, I think that there are some races that the Red Bull is historically really strong in, and then there are some that the Red Bull's historically not very strong in.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to come down to Max at the end of the day and his relationship with his engineers and what they're able to pull out. I know that's totally the diplomatic answer, but he could get really rattled in Singapore because they consistently don't do well in Singapore. And if he lets that affect him, that could really create a domino effect that opens the door for McLaren.
Stroppy Max. Someone who's probably feeling a bit stroppy as well is Checo Perez. Now it's this sort of long running problem with him. He gets a bit better, he goes worse again, he gets a bit better, he loses points. It feels like everyone knows that Red Bull are Max is kind of fighting this Constructors' Championship on his own at the moment with one hand tied behind his back as far as the team goes. What's going to happen with Sergio Perez? Do you think they've shown confidence in him. They've given him this contract extension, which probably doesn't mean an awful lot when it comes to Red Bull terms, because if he doesn't perform at the end of the day, they will boot him out anyway. What do you think is going to happen with him? Is he going to stick it out for the rest of the season? Do you think he'll be here long term as per the length of his contract?
I think that they want to keep Checo. I really do, because I think that they know he's not a liability as far as PR concerns, which they're juggling left and right now. And they also know that he brings in a lot of money and a lot of sponsorship. And so for the sake of the brand, I think he's really, really good for Red Bull. As far as car performance, they know he's capable of performing at a really high level. I think they're willing to give him the time for him to get there, but it's kind of like that meme where you have one eye facing the camera and the other one's kind of looking to the side. I think they have the corner of their eye on Daniel and Yuki all the time.
Do you think they bring Daniel back? I mean, I know Christian Horner's got this great relationship with Daniel, but I mean, he's not exactly set the world on fire, is he?
Yeah, and I think we'll get to this later in the episode. I actually think that Yuki should be preferred over Daniel in that decision. Am I in the room for any of these decisions? No. Do they ask me? No. But if I were them, I would take a look at Yuki, and I would look at bringing up Yuki.
Well, yeah, when you look at it at face value as a fan, obviously, like you say, we're not in the room. We don't see behind the scenes. We don't necessarily all the data and, all the other stuff that goes along with just being a good driver. But as you look at it right now, he's performing better. And I guess with him, though, you've got the potential for friction. Yuki and Max Verstappen alongside each other. I don't know. I can see why they think that might not work. But Daniel, I just can't. I can't see that ever working out. I don't know. I mean, he's just not really performed for quite a lot, not consistently for a long time. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there. Mercedes, they, as we've alluded to, look like they're making some gains, and they've got two class drivers. Even though George just makes me cringe, but he is a world-class driver. Do you think they can challenge a little bit this year? And perhaps it's a battle between them and McLaren for P2.
I think so. I think that they have a real shot at P2. Maybe. There's a lot that needs to happen. Again, kind of like McLaren to get P1. There's a lot that needs to happen for Mercedes in order for them to really solidly get that P2 seat. And they need to start seeing winnings, 1-2 finishes, which I don't really see happening that consistently when you have Red Bull and McLaren in the mix. But then again, I feel like anything is possible when you come back from the summer break. It's kind of almost like starting over, but everybody keeps the points that they had before. Anything can happen. It's hard to play Houdini and pretend what's going to happen, because the reality is none of us know. And I know they're not supposed to develop the car over the break, but You can't stop somebody's brain from working, and you never know.
And they've obviously got a strong lineup there, even though Lewis is leaving at the end of the year. But do you think with Lewis, he'll continue to push? Because he's coming good again now. I think it's widely accepted that he's George has dominated in terms of qualifying, but Lewis is I think Lewis is ahead in the standings as things stand going into the second part of the season. But whenever someone quits a job and they've got a long notice period, it's incredibly hard for that individual to stay focused and present right up until the day they leave. And I know that everyone will say, look, this is Lewis Hamilton. He's a born winner. He's not going to check out of Mercedes early. But do you think there's a danger of that? Do you think there's, a little mental switch in Lewis's brain that over the course of the next few weeks, he's thinking, well, do I really want to give this my all? When, even if it's subconsciously not quite doing what he should because he knows he's buggering off at the end of the year.
I think Lewis is a student of the game in every sense of the word. If you want to talk about somebody that's the exception to every rule, it's Lewis Hamilton. And so I think that he's going to, if we start to see a little bit of a drop off in the attention, I actually think it'll come in like the last 2 races. I don't think it'll start to set in quite yet because I think he smells blood. I think he's gotten a couple wins over the last couple of months. And I think he sees, okay, I have a potential to really leave with a bang here and also go into my new team on a high, on a roll, because he's not quitting. I mean, he's just leaving the team. Yeah. And so he has the opportunity to go in with some really good mojo going into Ferrari, which, let's be real, they need some good mojo.
They need something, don't they? I mean, it's just so frustrating with them. You think, here we go, Ferrari are back. Oh, no, they're not.
Yeah.
No, it's going to be interesting. I'm fully looking forward to the rest of this season. I hope we see 1 or 2 surprises. What would you like to see? Is there any particular hot takes or any surprises you think we might see from perhaps some teams or drivers outside of the big guns?
Well, we kind of hinted at it a little bit earlier when we were talking about Red Bull. I think that Yuki has more to give and more to prove and more to show. I think that both Yuki and Nico Hulkenberg, I was looking at the driver standards. Nico Hulkenberg is over here tied with Yuki in points. They're both ahead of their teammates, ahead of the Alpines. It is remarkable.
It is
what they both have done in the cars that they're in. So I think that we might see some more from them.
I'm expecting a Hulkenberg podium at some point in one of the remaining races. I've said it previously. I think he's doing such a good job, and Haas has surprised everybody with their car this year. So my dark horse for a win is going to be Hulkenberg. I can't really see too many others who haven't won a race yet who are really, in with a shout of doing it. And I'm not saying he's going to win a race. I think that's a step too far. I'm not stupid. But, if there's a race with a lot of rain or there's, a bit of drama and he can capitalize on some mistakes, I think he could be right up there. And I really hope he does. Any other hot takes for us for the rest of the season before we let you get on with your day?
Yeah, I don't think so. If you had asked me prior to Hungary, I would have said an Oscar Piastri win, but that's been fulfilled. I don't publicly say who I'm a big fan of, but I always feel like I can safely say I'm a big Oscar Piastri
I'm getting that
supporter.
Vibe from you.
Yeah. So
he's your guy, isn't he? He's
well, and he looks like, it's funny, my brother-in-law and my little brother, if you mashed their faces into one person, I'm not exaggerating when I tell you, they would look exactly like Oscar Piastri. Even my daughter, when she sees Oscar Piastri on the screen, she perks up and starts talking because he looks like her uncles. And so I'm like, I have to like Oscar Piastri. He's my daughter's favorite.
Well, that's fine. Let's champion Oscar. I don't mind that. I had a similar thing when years ago when I first, no, probably not when I first started out, but I'd been in Formula One for a little while, and my dad, who had clearly been on the booze at the time, saw Jake Humphrey presenting the coverage of it. Do you know who Jake Humphrey is?
I can't say I do.
So Jake Humphrey is an ex Formula One pundit. And he's now has a very, very popular podcast called the High Performance Podcast. Go and have a listen. Okay. It's quite good. He interviews all sorts of people, lots of F1 drivers. George Russell's been on there recently, and he's had, I think, Alex Albon and loads of others, team principals. Anyway, it's all about high performance. But apparently he looks very like me. So you should Google Jake Humphreys. And we had him on this show, actually, and I said that to him, and he wasn't impressed in the slightest. But my dad phoned me and went, "You've done it. You're presenting the F1 on the TV. You had a boy." I was like, "No, Dad, that's not me. It's Jake Humphrey." He's like, "Oh, shit, yeah." Because he must have been down the pub all afternoon. But there is a passing resemblance. And every time I see him, I bump into him very occasionally, and I always say, "Hey, we look the same."
That's hilarious.
So like, no, we don't. But yeah, see what you think.
Awesome.
I think there is a passing resemblance. Anyway, it's been a pleasure having you back on again. I've left out our final three that we usually ask everybody because we didn't have you on all that long ago, and we covered it off then. Unless there's anything new that nobody knows about you, which is one of our final three questions, which I asked you last time. Is there anything that nobody really knows about you? Any other little hidden gems?
About me?
We know you can dance, you can sing. Your dad was an NFL player. We've got these things.
Yeah, I mean, what else? I feel like my husband's a dermatologist. I don't know if that...
I'll take it.
Yeah, I don't know if that counts, but hey, if you're looking for some good skincare, give me a call.
There we go, people. Thank you to our new sponsors.
Yeah.
Caroline's husband.
I will say, though, real talk, Eastine, the Spanish skincare company,
yes,
they had reached out to me earlier in the season and sent me a bunch of stuff, which was really kind of them. And I was so excited. And my husband got really excited. Turns out their like VP of marketing lives in my town where I live.
I mean, if ever there was a sponsor for Caroline's Corner, there
Truly.
it is. Tap them up.
Yeah, I know. The merge of my two loves. I mean, they represent Carlos Alcaraz. Not that I'm anywhere close to Carlos Alcaraz level, but they're one of his major sponsors. So I was like, hey.
Well, there you go. Caroline's Corner brought to you by whatever that
Eastine.
company was called.
Yeah.
Eastine. There you go. You're welcome. I'll take 20%. Good to hear. Well, look, it's been a pleasure catching up as always. Good luck with Caroline's Corner. I'm sure it'll be a great success. Look forward to tuning in. I'll make sure to give it a follow. And everyone that's listening, please go and follow Caroline's Corner on your chosen podcast player. Give her a follow, write a review. All that stuff makes a massive difference to everybody that's trying to follow this content creator journey. So for now, Caroline, I'm sure I'll speak to you soon, but thanks so much again for joining us on the MotorMouth Podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tim. We'll talk to you guys next time.